Good morning from the Flanagan Homestead. I found some video the other day of something that happened about 3 years ago. I think it was 3 years ago, and I just thought I'd share it. Unfortunately, I lost a lot of video of things that were done on the property here before I had a YouTube channel, but I thought I'd share the story now that I found some of this. Okay, today's a story about a barn fire that I had on Christmas morning. You know, Christmas is supposed to be a magical time, and you always hope that it's snowing on Christmas morning. We had snow Christmas morning a few years ago, but we also had a barn fire, and that was not a good thing. So today I'm going to tell you about that story, but a couple things that I want to remind you about right now before we get going. Number one, heat lamps. Get a barn safe heat lamp. I got mine from Premier One Supplies, my new one. And number two, make sure your outbuildings are insured on your property, which fortunately for me, that's the happy part of this story. Mine was insured. So back here where you see this barn, I had a goat and chicken barn, and it's also a garden shed, and so everything's in there. But it was a cold day, so I had a heat lamp in there. We had some young goats and chickens in there, so I had the heat lamp in there. And unfortunately, I don't know for a fact, but I believe one of the goats knocked over the heat lamp down into some straw, and it started a fire, unbeknownst to us. So about 6 o'clock in the morning, my wife is laying in bed, and my bedroom window is right here facing down towards the barn and the view down here. And my wife goes, "What's going on, Rob?" And I wake up, and our whole ceiling is just glowing orange, just this bright glowing orange. I go, "What in the world?" I jump up and I look down to where that barn sits now, and our entire barn, the entire width of the barn was engulfed in flames and just shooting to the sky. And so I run down there and I try to put it out, but you know, you have a garden hose and that's all you have. And like I said, it was that magical Christmas morning where we actually had snow and ice. And so the hose was frozen solid, so the water wouldn't flow through it except for the places where it was close enough to the fire that it would melt the hose and water was dripping out the side there. Here we are about 5 minutes later, maybe 10. The roof just collapsed in. There's my hose out here, but it's still frozen. I don't know if a garden hose would have done much to even slow it down at all. Fortunately, there's plenty of distance between the barn and any other structures, and snow on the ground, so nothing else is going to burn. I'm standing about 40 feet away. My hands are getting scorched holding the camera up right now. It's probably going to fall in on itself in just a minute here. I'll just fence the animals in and start building Christmas morning, or the day after Christmas. But there was absolutely no saving this barn at that point in time. We're far enough out that by the time the entire structure was already in flames. I knew there was saving nothing. So at that point in time, I was like, "Are the animals out?" Yeah. And so we let the animal, I made sure the animals are out. You can see a picture of Ruby here, my favorite goat. Her hair is kind of singed. One of the issues that the animals had is, the barn is their safe place. So when the fire started, they're scared and they wanted to stay in the barn until eventually, obviously, the heat and smoke forced them out. And so they left. But I did not lose a goat or a chicken in this fire, praise God. So then I just started making makeshift shelters all over the place, just putting out sawhorses and things like that and a tarp over it so the chickens and goats had a place to cover themselves in the weather. And so at that point in time, I was like, well, what do I do? It's Christmas morning. I can't, it's a complete loss. So it's like, well, let's go have open stockings and have Hot Mama cinnamon rolls and do what we do on Christmas morning. And so obviously, I was like, there's no saving any part of this, so I need to restart tomorrow. So how do I do this? So I very simply started going, it didn't have a foundation. It was basically a wood shed type structure that had a wood floor sitting on top of the ground and then all the way up. So I just started going down every hour or so and just raking everything back into the middle, just raking all the wood and just burning it away because I wanted it completely gone. I could put out the fire eventually, I suppose, once the water started flowing from the hose, but then I got to collect everything and then take it to the dump. Well, here we are about, must be 20 minutes later, half an hour later. We got the hose thawed so we could spray, but at this point we're just going to try to burn everything away. We're trying to save the 2 fence posts on either side so that we keep the fence up and rebuild in between. It had unfortunately it had a very nice architectural shingle on it that matched our house, but it was tar, so that shot up in flames, everything burned away. So I was like, well, I'm going to get rid of everything. So I just started raking everything in. And so after hours and hours, you know, you just like a brush pile, you burn it in, roll it in until it's all gone. And I have about 4 or 5 pieces of these just for kind of history of the farm. This is about 5 of these is what's left of the structure of the barn. Here's a saw, there was a wood handle on it. I have several pitchforks with just the tine, no handle. If it was fiberglass handle, wood handle, it didn't matter. It was all completely gone. So I have shovels and pitchforks. I don't know where those are. I saved those, but the tools with nothing left, extension cords with just bare wire laying there now. And so I cleaned up the mess and we just started building the next day. It's on a really sloped area of the property. My entire property is sloped, and then I wanted to make it a little bit larger, so I just started digging down and going, you know, trying to level out a space, and ordered up some wood and just started building the deck. And fortunately, some guys from the church came out and helped me, and I have some sons that are capable workers, and within a couple days we had at least the roof on, and so we could start putting the animals back in it, so it was good. But there's a couple of lessons that I learned from that. One, be careful with your heat lamps. I just had, you know, the aluminum lid, and then the light bulb hung down beyond that, and I had it hanging really low, and I'm pretty sure one of the goats knocked it down and just got it into the fire. But now I have one from Premier One Supplies that's insulated and fire safe, or much more safe in the barn, so I still use that. And number 2, make sure you're insured. When this is all done, and we're like, well, how are we going to pay for this new structure? You know, there would have been a way, but it would have been more of a burden. And I started looking into my insurance, and I called my insurance company, and they said, yeah, sure enough, you're insured for your outbuildings. So that's something that you're going to definitely want to check on. Even before I built the barn that burnt down, I had built a pump house, well house out here, and that's why I had added outbuildings. I have more now, but fortunately, the coverage that I had covered all outbuildings. And so, due to the fact that building costs were going up and it was hard to get a contractor at the time, the price value of that little tiny home, that little tiny barn, was a lot. So I was able to build a little bit bigger and better one with my insurance money. I'll have to say my insurance company really came through for me. They didn't fight me a lot, which they probably could have, because they came in and they said, okay, your barn burned down, can we look at the remains? Because usually if there's a fire, you put it out, and then you see the footprint that it was in and everything. And I was like, no, there's nothing left. And they said, what do you mean there's nothing left? I said, no, I rolled it in because I knew I wanted to build. There is nothing left of the barn. I mean, like I said, there was 5 pieces like this left of the entire barn. And he said, well, what about the foundation? I said, it was wood on it. And so he said, can you show me what were the materials? So I had to go and search and find different pictures and videos that the family had. You know, I had a couple pictures when the baby goats were born and my wife was with them, so they could see that and they could see the type of siding. I showed them that, you know, they were able to see that it was an architectural shingle that matched the house, so that was a good material. And you know, they could see the fence post that was up against the house, how that was up against the barn. They could see how that was singed and that was right against it. So they basically took all my information and wrote me a check that day, and we got going. And so we were able to replace it. And now the last barn didn't have a loft. The nice thing about this one, even though it's still a pretty small barn, close to our house here, you know, I could get a good amount of, I could get plenty of bales of hay up in the loft now and have all the room for the animals down below, whereas before I didn't have a loft up above. So I built a little bit higher with the gambrel barn. But that's my story of a barn and of the barn fire, and 2 lessons learned. Be careful with your heat lamps, and make sure your outbuildings are insured. And for that matter, I'm buying some new equipment here this week, hopefully, and I need to double check my insurance policies and say, hey, if I get a bigger piece of equipment, a big tractor, an excavator, or something like that, is this covered, or is this something that's going to be a loss? So anyway, thanks for joining me on the Flanagan Homestead, where Christmas trees are my business, teaching, including horticulture, is my job, and outdoor projects like rebuilding barns is my passion. Hope to see you again soon. I'd love it if you like, subscribe, and share. It does me a lot of good. This plum tree still has the scars from the fire on it, but it's hanging in there.